All right, good evening, everyone. I call the May 5th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is the continued discussion of the general downtown corridor 3-floor overlay and related code amendments study session continued from April 7th. Before we move on to agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our remote meeting format. As with our previous meeting, the commissioners and staff will be participating via Zoom. During this Zoom meeting, the chat and question functions are not available to ensure compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a public comment agenda item at the beginning of the meeting, and this time is for comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. We will also welcome comments on agenda items after the staff presentation and before the commissioners begin discussion of the downtown code amendment item. So if you wish to speak to that, please wait for the agenda item. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function if you'd like to make a comment, and Director Cotterman will bring you into the meeting and invite you to unmute. You'll have to unmute yourself. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under Governor Inslee's Proclamation 20-28 regarding open public meetings, this meeting will be held remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing and orally. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. People wishing to comment were instructed to notify staff or provide written comments by 3 p.m. today. A video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded later and be available later for viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone and listen live to the meeting. For those phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they are referencing so everyone may follow along. Those who provided advance notice will be able to make comments under the audience comment portion of the meeting. Email was encouraged as well and will be acknowledged. And again, you can use the raise hand function during that comment period to be brought into the meeting as well. At this point, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the attendance of the commissioners. We have Commissioner Dodd. Present. Commissioner Westerbeck. Commissioner Gerd.
Here.
Commissioner Robeson.
Robson here.
Commissioner Alderks.
Present.
And absent and excused is Commissioner Gustafson. In addition, Community Development Director Mike Cotterman and Senior Planner Dave Boyd are in attendance. Lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name and each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking and unmute when you wish to speak. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. For commissioners, at the specific breaks in the presentation, I'll be calling on members who wish to speak or ask a question. If you wish to speak, indicate this by holding your yellow speaker card or otherwise getting my attention, and I'll call on you as I see them. And when we're in ribbon format, sometimes they need to scroll back and forth, so please do be patient. This will help avoid the problem of having 2 people speaking at one time. Identify yourself before you ask a question, make a motion, second a motion, or participate in debate. And again, please mute your microphone when not speaking. So moving on to our agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is public comment. In keeping with Governor Jay Inslee's emergency proclamation 20-28 regarding public meetings and open public meetings, the city has accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to staff no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all commissioners and are part of the record. This time is for items not on tonight's agenda. So again, if you wish to speak to the downtown code amendments, please wait for that agenda item. Director Cotterman, please let us know if there are any comments received.
There were no written comments received, Mr. Chair, and we have one person who has indicated they would like to speak during this comment period.
All right, well, let's invite that person in to speak with us.
Okay. Sadie, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll start by thanking the city staff, planning commissioners, and Landmark Preservation Board for the work you were doing and for answering the questions asked in the April Planning Commission meeting. And I appreciate those who visited the Sunrise Valley View neighborhood in the past month. I'd also like to provide a few comments regarding the April meeting. So first, although you cannot see us in Zoom, YouTube, and cable, please remember that your audience is made up of real people with real feelings and a real commitment to both Bothell and the neighborhoods. April was the first planning meeting I have watched, and I was startled by some of the language used during the meeting. For example, the characterization of the public commenters as some of the people complaining earlier today, I felt set a dismissive tone for the next part of the meeting, which was about the proposed code amendments that had the possibility of affecting those providing public comments. There was also the repeated characterization of the blocks A through E differences as weird, which to me felt othering as opposed to something less loaded like different topography. These are just examples, and I do not believe that the intent was uncaring. And I also know that public speaking is really hard, and it is especially difficult to comment spontaneously. This is simply a reminder that words matter. Second, while it's not on tonight's agenda, I want to highlight the importance of the continuation of setback requirements for development adjacent to single-family neighborhoods. The setback requirements provide a transition zone that allows for some privacy and helps maintain character of our neighborhoods. The vegetated part of the transition zone also provides ecological benefit by allowing for things like water infiltration, carbon sequestration, and habitat. The argument to squeeze what we can out of the land fails to recognize the ecological services that vegetated transition buffers provide. So I'll end with encouragement and thanks to everyone for their passion and for their creativity, and I look forward to listening to tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenthal. Director Cotterman, any other parties interested in commenting?
I have no one else signed up. If there's anyone else who would like to speak who's in the attendee room, please raise your hand. I have one other speaker. Christina Gustafson. And Christina, can you hear me?
You are muted, Ms. Gustafson.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, and this is the general comment period. You have a general comment because I know you'd also signed up to speak on the item later on the agenda this evening.
Okay, perhaps I should wait till then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
All right,
I can
then.
figure out how to put people back in the other room. Okay, I think I've figured it out.
All right, seeing no other comments during this public comment period, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes of the April 7th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Commissioner Curd.
I move to approve the minutes from April 7th, 2021.
There is a motion before us to approve the minutes to the April 7th meeting, 2021. Is there any discussion around that motion?
Do you have a second, Mr. Chair?
Is there a second? I'm sorry.
I will second it.
All right, Commissioner Westerbeck has seconded the motion to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion around the motion to approve the minutes of the April 7, 2021 meeting? Looking across the panels here, I do not see any commissioner indicating an interest in commenting. So all in favor of approving the minutes, the April 7th, 2021 meeting minutes, please indicate. And I see all 6 present commissioners indicating by raising their hands. So the minutes of the April 7th, 2021 meeting are approved. Director Cotterman, is there any new business for us tonight?
No new business, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then we will move on to our next item, a study session around the general downtown corridor 3-floor overlay and related code amendments, continued study session. A reminder, we'll begin with a staff presentation. During the staff presentation, if the commissioners have any clarifying questions, please indicate so, get our attention, and staff will provide the necessary clarification. We'll hold any discussion until a bit later. After the staff presentation, we'll invite public comment, and at the close of the public comment, the commission will begin discussion of the item in the study session. So with that, Senior Planner Boyd, would you like to begin the presentation?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Let me share my screen.
And just for the commission's information, and also for Dave, Mike Stanger is in the attendee room. If there are any questions, then you need, I can bring Mike in as well.
Yes, and I was going to acknowledge Mike, who has been invaluable in helping us work through the affordable housing provisions for these code amendments. So again, this is a continued study session on the General Downtown Corridor 3-floor overlay code amendments, and which is continued from April 7th. The purpose tonight is to provide additional analysis and response to comments and to get commission feedback on 4 items. 1, limiting the additional height and affordability requirement to parcels fronting on Beardsley and 185th and not next to single family zoning. I'll get into that more later. Question about whether where we're layering or where there's more than one affordability component on a parcel, whether there's a preference for having a greater number of affordable units or deeper affordability, or whether the commission is comfortable giving that choice to developers. And then questions about reduced parking for micro apartments, potentially without an additional affordability provision. And then finally, support or at least I'd like to gauge commission support for variable setbacks, which is one of the questions that came up and that I'm tried to clarify in the packet, and we'll do so also in the presentation. So what's new tonight? We have done additional analysis of the affordability provisions of the parking requirements that was also in the packet using the King County right size parking calculator, and a different approach to the extent of the changes proposed. Also, the packet, the memo included response to comments, clarifying height measurement, clarifying the variable setback requirement, and revisiting special setbacks, and the potential to combine mandatory and voluntary affordability regulations. And I included here the image of our analysis mapping out those special setback requirements from single family zoning that abuts or is across the street from portions of the general downtown corridor. So the question of the extent of the proposed overlay, we presented initially 5 different areas within the GDC 3-floor overlay for consideration. As we've done our analysis, we are proposing, staff is recommending that instead of actually mapping where where we would revise that overlay, that we define the parcels that could add an additional floor based on our analysis of where that is likely to happen, and to provide enough of a increase in capacity to provide a nexus for an affordability requirement. So the proposal, and again, our intent is to at our next session to go to public hearing and to bring with you code language. So we're not presenting any code language today, but the idea is that parcels that front on 185th and Beardsley within the general downtown corridor 3-floor overlay would be allowed to go to 4 floors with an affordability requirement. That essentially eliminates area E from consideration, since it doesn't front on either of those streets, 185th or Beardsley, and also because all of the parcels in that are either adjacent to or across the street from single-family zoning. Currently, Area C is a single parcel, and a piece of it is across the street from single-family zoning, across Beardsley Boulevard from a piece of the Sunrise Valley View district. So that would not be, under the current parcelization there, that would not be eligible for a 4th floor, but it's possible that the owner of that could subdivide it in a way that would allow them to go to 4 floors on a portion of that current parcel. And that's really the one reason for going with this approach is, rather than mapping this out based on existing property lines, recognizing that over time there are likely to be some accumulations of parcels or subdivisions of parcels, so that so we don't have to change the map every time that happens. This definition would allow us to move forward and apply that additional floor where it actually makes sense, given the special setback requirements. And I've shown with blue dots the parcels that currently would qualify. So it does include the applicant's 2 parcels, as well as the 2 parcels with single-family homes to the southwest, and then many of the rest of the parcels are unlikely to redevelopment. Of course, the fire station has the 2 parcels at 185th and Beardsley on the north side. But there is an apartment complex just east of the fire station, potentially could redevelop. There are 2 parcels that front on Beardsley and don't touch the adjacent single-family zoning that could potentially redevelop. And as I said, it's quite possible that there could be some changes over time. This also shows the parcel at the far, having trouble with my cursor here.
Dave, if I could interrupt while you're
Yes.
during the pause, Mr. Chair, there, Commissioner Robson, I believe, has a question.
Yes, please jump in.
This is my yellow ticket.
Yeah, sorry, you were off the ribbon.
No, oh, I see. I apologize. Because you're doing such a thorough job, but I just want a little additional clarification. These blue dotted parcels are parcels that are not abutting single family homes, but that does not mean the ones that do not have a blue dot are, I'm sorry, I'm not even saying this correctly. Might the ones that do not have a blue dot be up for consideration at another point?
They could, with with a change in configuration. For example, this parcel here, north of 185th between Beardsley and Ross Road, currently does extend to Ross Road across from single-family zoning. If the owner of that parcel did want to redevelop and did want to go up to 4 stories on the 185th side, they could conceivably subdivide it, do a 3-story development on the north parcel and a 4-story development on the south portion of that parcel.
Okay.
I also wanted to point out up at the northeast end of Beardsley, there are a number of parcels here that don't abut single-family zoning, but all of these parcels, except for the one with the blue dot, were actually combined into the Beardsley South Townhome development. So that's why I haven't, and that's an example of how the property lines can change over time.
Okay. Okay, so so the ones with the blue dots are just the ones we're considering for this meeting, and all the other ones may come up at another time, but not for us to focus on today. Is that right?
Well, that's the staff recommendation, and
Okay.
so I do want to, at the end of the meeting, get Planning Commission's
Okay.
direction on whether they agree with that or have other thoughts about how we should proceed.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So, and for the most part, I'm not going to show the earlier analysis of those 5 areas, but I did want to point out earlier I had shown a different image of the portion of the parcel that extends from Circle Drive down to 522 with a low retaining wall that looked like it might possibly be a candidate for development that would come off of 522. But in closer examination, it's quite a taller retaining wall there, and actually within the restricted access area from the 522-405 interchange. So there really is no opportunity for that kind of redevelopment. And so with the special setbacks, that's one reason that staff is recommending to not consider block area E any further. And I did want to just touch again on these special setback requirements, and I've highlighted in the dashed red ovals that these apply adjacent to residential only zoning, actually apply adjacent to single family zoning only. But these diagrams also show a flat topography and a situation where a building could go up to 4 floors as once you get outside of that special setback, upper level setback. In reality, most of this area is sloped. The situation is that you could have 3 stories on the uphill side of the slope, and for the most part, the area slopes away from the single family zoning. And then have 4 stories on the downhill side facing the arterial streets, 185th and Beardsley, for example. The other reason for this illustration is to show that, and without the allowance for 4 floors, then you would have to, a building on that kind of site would have to step down. So I included this also to illustrate the variable setback, because there was a question from one of the commissioners about that. And this was a provision that was added to the code in an earlier amendment for the GDC area that allowed, in a situation where, again, where development is adjacent to single family zoning, it would allow a developer to essentially move the whole footprint of the development away from the single family zoning towards the primary street frontage or the arterial street frontage, and could decrease the front setback from the current minimum of 20 feet down to as little as 5 feet, as long as they increase the rear setback by a like amount. Hopefully this illustration shows how that would work. And what we're proposing, again, staff recommendation, is to modify that slightly so that it would apply not only to adjacent to single family zoning, but adjacent to single family development. We did hear from one of the owners of single family homes, new single family homes that were actually built since this area was zoned GDC, but the developer chose to build single family homes and they don't have this special setback requirement. So this would just give the developer flexibility to reposition the building on the site, which may have other advantages for him, and move it further away and relatively lower to the adjacent single family development. Any questions on that? And I'm going to have to rely on, I'm
not seeing any commissioners.
Okay. I'm going to rely on Chair Kiernan and Director Utterman to pick out questions.
And I've scrolled the ribbon twice and haven't seen anyone raise their hand, so I think we can proceed.
That's clear. So on the affordable housing provisions, we did talk previously about possibility of mandatory provisions adjacent to 185th and Beardsley, and possibly a voluntary program on the rest of the area. But after looking at it more carefully, we could do that, but we don't think there would really be any takers. We think it would be an exercise in futility. We think the real opportunity here is on the portions of this area that do front on Beardsley and 185th and don't have that single family adjacency. And with our other mandatory programs, they apply to developments of would apply to developments of 5 units or more. So two of the questions that we're continuing to analyze and would like to get feedback from the Commission are whether to allow developers to layer and or to stack this additional floor of height and its affordability requirements with other provisions like multifamily tax exemption. And then we're also proposing that we would have a separate affordability provision for multifamily tax exemption for micro apartments. So, and I apologize that we're not ready to give you really hard numbers, but the analysis that Mike Stanger has done indicates that that the market rate for micro apartments is around between 50 and 60% of area median income, leaning towards the 60 when we factor in some of the increases in housing costs and the fact that the rental market has been depressed to some degree over the last year due to COVID. And so the proposal would likely include all of the units would be affordable at some percentage of below 100% of area median income, and most likely close to that 60%. So what we're proposing is to qualify for the multifamily tax exemption they need to go one step further. And the program requires, to get the 12-year exemption, requires 20% of the units to be affordable. And we're proposing that those be affordable at 50% of area median income, just for the MFTE. In the other comparable area where we rezoned from general commercial to SR 522 corridor along 522 in the west part of the downtown sub area, and which resulted in an increase from being able to do 3 floors to being able to do 4 floors, and added the ability to do housing. The calculations there indicated a requirement of that 5% of the units be affordable at 60% of area median income. And that was for conventional housing. We didn't take micro units into consideration at that point. So again, there's still some analysis and some number crunching to do, but we think would be without MFTE, the increase in height would result in a similar requirement. And then one question is, if you add that to MFTE for micros, for example, is there a preference between allowing them to do 25% of the micros at 50% AMI versus sticking with the 20% and going with a deeper affordability level? I think staff's inclination is, once we get the numbers right, it should be we try to balance the benefit of this additional capacity or the tax exemption between the developer and the public. And it should be a situation where we can give the developer the option and still get a good result. Any questions on that?
So scanning across, I'm not seeing anyone indicate a question. So I think, Dave, you can continue.
Okay. And then micro housing issues, not a whole lot has changed here from what was shown before, except for the analysis of the parking requirement for micros. And so I did an analysis using the King County right size parking calculator, which takes into account the location, the zoning, the proximity to transit, the size of the parcel, the projected rents for the parcel, and has an algorithm that shows what the projected parking need is and what the ideal amount to provide would be, and also takes into account what if any, the charge there is for the parking. This proposal, this micro development proposal, is a little bit unusual. Other micro apartments that have been developed in the area, they typically don't have structured parking. Here, the developer is proposing 2 levels of structured parking below the units. And of course, that's more expensive to build than doing surface parking, or in some communities like Seattle, most of these are done in areas where there is no parking requirement. But here, using that calculator and the projected pricing of the units and parking, the calculator showed that there was utilization of about 131 spaces. The applicant is proposing 143. Basically, a single level of parking they determined wasn't going to be enough. and they agreed that they didn't really need a whole second level, but once you're building another level of parking, it makes sense to build it out. So they're actually providing more than they think they need, and that jived with the analysis using the right size parking calculator. And I did include that in the packet. I didn't include it in the presentation here. So, in terms of parking reductions, commissioners who were here when we looked at the state limits to parking adjacent or near frequent transit, the state required that we consider or that we have a minimum for market rate housing within a quarter mile of frequent transit that was either one space per bedroom, which is the current requirement in GDC, so we already meet that, or 0.75 spaces per unit, which is what the applicant is requesting. The ultimate decision was to hold off on going beyond that one space per unit within a quarter mile so that we could analyze the any affordable housing provisions that we could impose due to the any reduction in the required parking. Here, we are proposing in this at this point, based on the analysis that we did that we've done, that we create a separate parking requirement for micro units, and that would be done at 0.75 per unit without any additional affordability requirements, since that is what that's actually a little bit higher than the calculator shows the utilization will be. But that's a question for the commission that we want direction from the commission. Are you comfortable with that, or do you want us to do some additional analysis on adding an affordability requirement for that parking reduction? So with that, and toward the end here, looking for actually this is from last time. This is additional on the parking requirement and whether it should be tied to multifamily tax exemption, tied to the additional affordability for doing a fourth level or by right. So with that, I think I've covered the issues that we want your feedback on, and so I would open that up for commission questions and clarifications before we go to public comments, and then further discussion and direction.
So commissioners, please indicate if you do have clarifying questions for Senior Planner Boyd. And Commissioner Westerbeck.
Just would like a clarification, Dave, on that last slide. It said the mandatory parking reduction similar to Canyon Park, or we create a separate, which would be the 0.75 for specifically micro housing. So is that two options on that we're going to discuss or that we need to decide?
Yeah. Canyon Park is an example of where we did, we both increased in some areas, we increased the height and we reduced the parking requirement and used both of those to calculate the affordability requirement. In this case, we're suggesting that we can get the affordability through the multifamily tax exemption and the additional height, and then allow down to 0.75 spaces per unit by right for micro apartments, and then later, hopefully later this summer, later this year, in any case, we are going to do a broader examination of expanding that parking reduction as Planning Commission initially recommended, core market rate housing citywide and including an affordable housing provision. And that would allow somebody doing micro who says, well, I only need a half a space per unit. If they can demonstrate that, we can say, oh, show us your parking study, convince us that that's going to be enough, and then you can do it with this additional affordability requirement.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Okay, other commissioners, clarifying questions? Okay, we will discuss these items in a little more depth after the public comment, hoping to get to recommendations for staff later in the meeting. So with that, we will move to the public comment section on this item. And Director Cotterman, I believe we had several people have indicated an interest in providing public comment.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So the first speaker that we have this evening is Christina Gustafson. I believe she's there. She is. Christina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. So what I'm thinking now is, after listening to the very beginning, if I understood it correctly, some of my concerns have changed if they are eliminating E from this proposal. Am I correct in what I heard?
That is the staff recommendation.
Okay. So I guess at this point, what I'd like to say is, if that's the case, and this particular parcel is unsuitable for the type of development that you're referring to, could we have at least the single family homes rezoned that are part of that GDC? Is that a possibility? I know you probably can't answer questions right now because it's a comment period, but that's a concern for people who own homes at the end of the street here. And if it's the case that E has been deemed not suitable, will they remove that proposed amendment sign at the end of our street?
Well, the sign will go away whenever council makes adopts whatever code amendments they choose to adopt.
I see. And that'll be after the public comment.
That'll be after additional public comment at the public hearing.
The public hearing, that's what I mean. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, before Planning Commission, and there'll be a public hearing before council as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Director Cotterman, other individuals seeking to make comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have at least 2 more signed up. Next, we have James Walsh. If I can get my computer to cooperate. James, can you hear me?
Yeah, this is James Walsh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, James. Thank you.
Thank you,
have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Catterman. Thank you, Commission, for the opportunity to speak here today. I just want to confirm that it's accurate to say that areas C and E have been removed from the plan.
I would say it would be more accurate to say that staff is recommending that some changes in the proposal that would eliminate E entirely and C, unless C was subdivided in a way that would allow them to take advantage of the fourth floor on a portion of their property.
Thank you. So it would still require an approval and a vote of the commission
Yes.
to move forward.
And council.
And council. Okay. For section E, our senior planner, are you indicating that E is removed only because you do not have access from 522?
No. The main reason is because the special setbacks really remove any realistic possibility of taking advantage of an extra story of development.
Okay, thank you.
So
thank you. So I guess my question is, why was section C and E added to the plan? I can understand areas A and B and D since they are adjacent to the college. And this proposal sounds very much like college student housing with shared kitchens and 0.75 parking spaces. It sort of sounds like a dorm situation to me. But this does not make sense for the residential areas on Valley View, Sunset, and Circle Drive. And I am opposed to the code changes for sections C and E. I have discussed this proposal with at least 4 families on Circle Drive, and they are equally opposed to including Area E in this proposal. The potential result of this proposal would be to negatively impact our neighborhood. I've lived in Bothell for more than 30 years, and I've already seen massive changes, including the addition of the college and all the related issues that come with it, with regard to college density, with parking, litter, constant ongoing construction, and lack of student transportation planning, which actually resulted in a brand new shiny parking garage on the campus, which has yet to be occupied by any vehicle. So I would strongly recommend that you do not include sections C and E in the proposal, and my neighbors share the same position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Director Cotterman, additional comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Next, we have Linda Carey. Linda, can you hear me?
Hi, folks. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can,
Yes.
Linda. Thank you.
Super.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the discussion about removing Block E from the table. I'm really hopeful that's what occurs, because we really do not have. It just seems silly to put a 4-story building right across the street and take all that vegetation out, and then have those folks right on top of 522. So I am hopeful that's what happens. But you know what? As I've been kind of mulling over since the last meeting, what would these changes mean to our little, couple block radius? And so I've done some walk arounds and some drive arounds, and I really am concerned about the traffic and parking still. And so I just went to the grocery store at 5 o'clock. Getting out of this neighborhood is a challenge. Cars line up all the way down to 522 on Kaesner. So it's only the grace of somebody's good nature letting us out of this neighborhood with that line of traffic. And then on the way back, I drove around to count parking spaces available on the street. And on Beardsley, there are only 13 spaces available at 5 o'clock. In downtown area closer to Beardsley, there was another dozen or so. And so when I think about assuming folks will have an ample parking inside the buildings that are being proposed, the builder or the developer or whoever's going to be managing that facility typically will charge for those parking spaces inside the building and their parking garages. And a lot of people are going to opt out of that so they can save that $100 or whatever it turns out to be. So where are all those folks going to go? And if we have let's say, I think I've seen a number of 181 units being added to this general area for this microhousing adoption. And if we had 181 units, and let's just say half of those people have cars, that would be, or let's just say at 0.75, let's just use their numbers. That's about 136 cars that we would be adding in this, 2 or 3 block radius. And let's say half of those folks decide, well, I'm not paying that $100. I'm just going to park on the street. Well, that's another 68 cars trying to find parking in 12 to 13 spaces every evening. And so think about that when you guys are making the decisions about parking and everything else. And I watch all the construction, and believe me, I am delighted about many of the changes that have happened in downtown Bothell. McMenamins is your crowning glory. And but I am concerned about traffic. I'm concerned about pedestrian safety. I'm concerned about
Ms. Carey, you're at 3 minutes. Could you please wrap up? Thank you.
Sorry. Anyways, my wrap up is parking, density, traffic, the end. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Director Cotterman, other comments?
No one else had signed up ahead of time, Mr. Chair, but I know some other folks have joined since. So I would ask if any of them would like to speak, if you could please raise your hand and I'll bring you into the discussion. I am not seeing any hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that being the case, we will end the public comment period during this study session, reminding everyone that the next step will be a public hearing where people will have an opportunity to speak on the record to whatever recommendations comes out of this. And then, of course, it goes to the City Council with more public comment. So with that, we'll move on to commission discussion. This is time for the commissioners to discuss this item generally. And in particular, we have a goal to give staff feedback and direction on the 4 items that were identified: the variable setbacks, the limiting the height adjustment to parcels that are not adjacent or across the street from single family home, to next, the requiring either a larger percentage or deeper affordability, and finally the parking adjustment. So why don't we take these one at a time and discuss them and see if we can get to a recommendation for staff. So Commissioner Dodd.
Thanks, Chair. Commissioner Dodd here. I actually got a chance with Commissioner Curd to walk around the sub area one Saturday. We got 8 miles in, according to our phones. So it was a healthy walk. We were able to chat, masked and everything, with some neighbors too. So it was really productive. And walking around the area, trying to take it all in, we were comparing to the map as we were going. My takeaway was that the areas called E and D on the map, to me, don't necessarily fit in. So my personal stance would be to eliminate E and D. I'm ready for any other commissioner to weigh in. Perhaps some are also familiar with this area, but that's kind of what I'm thinking just from my walk around. So thanks.
Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Robeson.
Thank you, Commissioner Robson here. I just wanted to double check. Was D recommended to be withdrawn as Lot E was, or was it? Did staff only recommend Lot E?
The staff recommendation would include 2 of the current parcels in D. It would not include any of C, as it's currently a single parcel, but again, there would be the possibility of dividing C in a way that would make it qualify. And if all of the parcels in D were combined, it would not qualify either, because it would be, then it'd be a single parcel abutting single-family zoning.
Dave, could you bring that up, that map of parcel area D?
Okay. So there are 4 parcels in Area D, 2 of which abut the Sunrise Valley View single-family zoning, 2 of which only abut Beardsley, and well, one of them abuts 108th Avenue.
And Dave, is it correct that there's significant elevation difference between the single-family housing, which is much higher than at least the Beardsley parcels on Section D, Area D?
There is. The memo for the April 7th specified it, I believe it was 30 to 40 feet in difference from Beardsley Boulevard up to the level of the single-family houses to the south.
Okay, thanks. So on this particular question, what you're seeking feedback from the commissioners on is whether to limit this change just to those parcels within these areas which are not adjacent to single-family zoning.
Adjacent or across the street.
Adjacent or across the street.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Westerbeck. I like your paint chips, by the way.
Thanks. That was my excuse last time. I've got lime green. I don't have yellow. So as long as it gets the job done. Thank you. To me, why I generally don't have a problem with removing the 4th floor overlay in all these areas, it makes sense to remove it for E if we're going to pull one out. And the reason being, it's completely separated from A, B, C, D by single family areas. They're currently single family. Even if we change zoning, they wouldn't change real quickly. And so it seems fine. It seems like, I've walked up there actually a lot. I've walked up to the university a number of times, to the cemetery, take walks through there, and then walk up to Beardsley as well. So I know these blocks very well. So E, take it out, not a big deal. Feels like a different area. But to me, I've long felt that C and D should be when they should be more dense. They should have things that are multi-use. They should hug Beardsley. It should be an extension really of downtown Bothell all the way to the university. And it's another reason I like the idea, which we'll get to, of the developers being able to push their buildings closer and put a bigger setback, as we've discussed in the packet as well. So if anything, I would actually say, remove E from consideration, but keep C and D, or keep C, I should say, because D hasn't been on the table till Commissioner Dodd brought it up. So because those are, to me, are of a piece, A, B, C, and D, and they really should be a more urban and mixed use nature, and they're more together, and it's a different, even just by those few blocks, it's a different part of town, and feels like it should be developed differently.
Okay, Commissioner Alders.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Alders here. My question is about Lot D, or the area that's being called D here. I think I understand why it's being called adjacent to single family housing. But what I do recall from that area is that it's actually like down the hill. And so the topography is such that it's a much lower level than the housing that is above and behind it. And so I'm wondering, does that change the consideration about Lot D, in the sense that, yes, it's abutting, but it's also abutting below it. So there is the possibility for that, like Commissioner Westerbeck said, to treat it as a continuation of Main Street and connect Main Street to the college. And Dave, do you have any thoughts on that, and how it, like, while it is abutting, it still is it's different enough to be considered part of the connection.
Right, and two of the four current parcels in Area D do not abut the single-family housing, so they would qualify for fourth floor under this proposal. And since they are 30 to 40 feet below Beardsley, below the single-family parcels up above, up the hill from them, they would be the roofs of those parcels would be below the ground of the single-family parcels to the south. So, and again, what we're proposing is not to apply this to any of these areas, but rather to define where you can build 4 floors based on your connection to Beardsley Boulevard and 185th, and the absence of an adjacency either directly or across the street from single-family zoning. So it's possible that could in the future could play out anywhere, or on a number of parcels in A, B, C, and D. Currently, the ones with the blue dots are where that would apply. And I will point out that there is a portion of the single-family zoning that does come right up to Beardsley Boulevard between C and D and where the downtown neighborhood zoning starts. Also, just for context, similar to the 3-floor overlay in GDC, the council did apply a 4-floor overlay on this triangle parcel between Beardsley and Valley View. That's what the white polka dot area is.
And as an aside, I believe that parcel just sold.
I've heard that.
So the issues that I've heard on this particular item are, and I'll kind of go backwards alphabetically, eliminating E, and there seems to be a fair consensus that commissioners are okay with that. There's discussion around D, whether to eliminate part of it, all of it, or keep it in. Discussion around C, and on areas A and B, it's whether to limit it to the dots or not. So comments on those items? Commissioner Curd.
Thanks. This is Karsten. I like what was proposed with the dots, even though it's only limiting to 10 parcels right now, because it affords flexibility in the future should boundary lines be adjusted by property owners. It's flexible and kind of future-proof should areas along 185th incur different uses. I don't know, with this sort of dot system, area C may still have potential for the 4-story overlay. And so I like how flexible that system is. And that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Curd. Other commissioners? Commissioner Robson.
Forgive me, as a newbie, I'm not entirely sure the process here. Are we specifically restricting a conversation to which parcels to include, or if I have comments regarding parking, is an appropriate time to add that commentary?
Well, I think for to help the staff, I'd like to go through one item first, see if we can get a consensus. And we certainly do have the other items, including parking. But if we can, I think Dave would appreciate closing one before opening another.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
I would agree. And so far I'm hearing stated in different ways, general support for the staff recommendation on where this should apply.
Commissioner Dodd?
I would be remiss if I did not also say I do like the dots. So I forgot to include that earlier. So thanks.
Commissioner Westerbeck?
I realize I forgot to comment on that as well. I'm fine with that because to me it's the most important that we allow for 4 stories along those along Beardsley and 185th. So I'm fine with that dot system as well. The staff recommendation on that.
Okay. Other commissioner comments or feedback to staff? Commissioner Alderks?
I would also add that based on community feedback and just the features of Lot E, that I support the recommendation to withdraw it from consideration.
So I think you have a consensus of the commission. I too agree with my fellow commissioners on that. So Dave, does that get you what you want on that item as far as, okay.
That gives me good direction to be able to come back with draft code language.
And just, go right ahead. Okay. And just because this is how I took it out of your staff report, I'll go to the next item, which was requiring either a larger percentage of affordable units with additional height or deeper affordability combined with MFTE. Is that a fair summary of that item, Dave?
Yes, and or the option would be also to just give the developer the option of more or deeper.
So commissioners, comments on those? Commissioner Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Robson. I just wanted to ask a question. Did the staff recommend against having the volunteer choosing one or the other? I thought I read this in here, but now I'm beginning to think maybe I misunderstood in the report versus what's being said.
I don't think we really made a recommendation in the memo, but as we've analyzed the numbers more, I guess personally I feel comfortable that I feel confident that we are gonna get the relative numbers right in terms of having equal benefit for both the public and the developer, whether it's a greater percentage of affordable units or deeper affordability for the 20% of the units. I think we feel comfortable in providing those options and allowing the developer to choose.
Thank you.
Commissioner Westerbeck.
Thank you, Commissioner Westerbeck here. I'm pretty much going to come down on the, I think this is a staff recommendation that the developer should be given the choice because it can be challenging and complicated to put these sorts of projects together. And sometimes they just, for whatever reason, work better one way than another. And if you're going to get some affordability out of it, regardless, it's just what kind. I don't think we need to dictate what that is as long as we're getting it. And they should be given a choice to figure out what's best for them and their project and hopefully their future tenants. So I lean towards choice.
Thank you. Commissioner Dodd.
Thanks, Chair. I concur with Commissioner Westerbeck. I think each project is going to be unique enough that that choice, I mean, we're still getting a benefit in the end, but that choice makes sense to me as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kurd, and then Commissioner Alders.
Thanks. This is Karsten. I'd lean towards choice as well, but I'm interested to know what layering those bonuses might look like, especially because Bothell doesn't have a whole lot of deep affordability, and that's kind of a missing piece that we tried to consider in Canyon Park. I don't know if we can get to really deep levels of affordability, even if we layer MFTE, multifamily tax exemption, on top. But I'd like to see some analysis. I don't know. If no one else is leaning towards that, then I'm fine. But I'd be interested to see how low we can get it.
You're muted.
Yes, I just got that message. Thanks, Commissioner Alders.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Alders here. I support what Commissioner Kurd is saying, that I would really like to see more analysis that would help us know what is possible, what levels of affordability are available. I just quickly crunched some numbers to find out just how many hours a person would have to work in a week, or work in a week to afford the micro housing, which is considered affordable at 60% of median. And what I came up with was about 49 hours, 50 hours of work a week in order to afford 200 square feet. And so I'm assuming that is somebody who is single. I can't imagine. And I'm sure families would pull it off, but there would be, children and adults living in 200 square feet, working 50 hours a week, and that would be 2.5 times rent. So I am very curious about how we can expand into deeper affordability so that our minimum wage working community members have spaces to live in Bothell. Thank you.
Commissioner Alders, other commissioners? So I'm a bit torn on this as well. My general inclination is to allow the flexibility to have a successful project. I think a successful project is much better than no project. But as I see the increasing housing costs in Bothell, I'm thinking the AMI is continue to increase as well. So I do have an interest in seeing what could happen on deeper affordability. So that's not clear direction for you. Sorry, Dave.
I think that's fine. We will continue to crunch the numbers and have those numbers next time, and we'll lay out the options in the code, and it'll be fairly easy to when you have in the code, when you have the 3 options and the ability to choose, or we can easily strike one if that's the direction Commission chooses to go.
Okay, great. Commissioner Westerbeck?
Thank you. Not to cloud things or complicate things, but I am 100% behind deeper affordability. It's badly missing in Bothell. We need it desperately, and the only entities that can do it usually are heavily subsidized affordable housing outfits. Well, so this is exciting that a project like this that's generally kind of aiming at market rate, but because they're small, they become naturally affordable, could maybe hit that. What I wonder is, because there may not be a tendency for developers to choose that deeper affordability, do we make it just a little bit sweeten the pot, as it were? We make it a little bit better for them to choose that deeper affordability option because it's less desirable for them as developers to do that. The 60% may be kind of, well, it's easier, so you don't get as much. If you go 40 or 30 or something, you'll get a little bit more from us, whatever that may be. And I don't know what that is. I don't have that answer yet, but maybe we change the incentives a little bit.
Thanks.
I would just clarify that our analysis so far says that market rate is going to be around 60. AMI. Our initial proposal, and we're going to refine our analysis between now and when we're asking you for a recommendation in June, indicates that 50% AMI would be a reasonable requirement to accompany the multifamily tax exemption. At that point, if we layer on that additional floor, we're probably not going to get a huge amount of additional affordability if we restrict it to those 20% of units. So I'm pretty confident in saying that we're not going to get to 30% through that, but we might be able to get a little bit lower. And then the benefit to the developer is, I could do 25% of the units at 50% and have 75% unrestricted, or I could charge a little bit less for those 20%, but have 80% of the others unrestricted.
Right.
So that's kind of the
zeroing it out
benefit.
either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
And we can think about whether there's other ways to kind of put our thumb on the scale a little bit towards the deeper affordability.
And I only say that because talking to people at Arch and then churches doing affordable housing and stuff, they, that 30% is the holy grail for the really deeply reduced 30% AMI, which sticks my head all the time. So I just threw that out there as, an option. But I know that I realize these are naturally affordable, so they hit 60% just by being normal price. So I get it. Those are 200 square feet. And I lived in a smaller unit than that 30 years ago, and I had a great life living there. So there's no reason to believe it's a bad quality of life. It's great.
Okay, other commissioners? So Dave, you got some information to go forward?
Thank you.
All right, the third item that I had on the list out of your staff report is the parking. Commissioner Robson. So allowing a parking reduction of 0.75 spaces per unit for micro apartments by right without additional affordability provisions, just allowing them to go forward with less. So commissioners, comments on that? Commissioner Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Robson. I just wanted to note some of the observations I got from the residents in that area is that their primary concerns regarding parking are the students not wanting to pay for parking at the college, and that increasing the lack of availability there. But the truth is that regardless of how much parking is available, if there's an available spot, a college kid will take it. So it seems to me that there are other ways to solve some of the parking issues that residents neighboring areas are facing. That, they could do resident only passes that aren't necessarily in our sphere of influence. The one thing I'm wondering about just as a newbie is how the sidewalks and development are related. And is there a requirement to build a sidewalk, particularly along that busy road? And because that's been a major point of conflict for the community, is that they're afraid of walking in that area. So, I'm for, accommodating a lower ratio of, I'm for reducing the number of parking spaces they need to provide per unit, and looking into other options to accommodate the safety of those roads. But I'm wondering if there's any option regarding sidewalks, because a lot of times the parking alongside of the street means people can't walk.
So Dave, frontage improvements.
So our frontage improvements actually, requirements have actually just changed. We changed them with the amendments that dealt with corner lot duplexes and 9-lot and allowed 9-lot short plats. We removed some exemptions that exist for requiring frontage improvements. There used to be exemptions, particularly for single family development, if it was a certain distance away from an adjacent sidewalk. And our public works staff decided that that really wasn't appropriate in as urban an area as Bothell is becoming. So that won't happen anymore, but those areas are all developed. So unless there's redevelopment of a site, those sidewalks won't be built there in the foreseeable future. Right now, our priority for sidewalks are for new sidewalks in areas that don't have them are safe walk to school areas. And the priority among schools are elementary schools. So so that's essentially where we're at there.
But if these parcels do develop, they will be required to have frontage improvements associated with them.
Yes.
They just won't fill in gaps where there's not development. Okay.
And that's another reason why we're recommending this requirement that it happen this be allowed on parcels fronting on Beardsley and 185th, because that's probably our highest priority for improving sidewalks. And we're going to get some improvements through sound transit and fire station redevelopment, but we'd like to see continuous good minimum 6-foot wide sidewalks between the campus and downtown.
Okay, so other commissioner comments on the recommendation to allow the reduction to 0.75 spaces per unit for micro apartments without additional affordability requirements. Commissioner Dodd.
Thanks, Chair. I have like a 2-part comment, which for me is impressive. It might have been a lot longer. So I was just going to respond real quick to Commissioner Robson's stuff about pedestrian safety. So like I said, I did get a chance to walk around the sub area. And a lot of what sticks out to me now is an incomplete sidewalk network, which is true of a lot of parts of the city. And then there's a number of sidewalks that have like tree roots or just unevenness. I remember I had debated about biking around to do the tour, and I was kind of glad I didn't, because that can get really hairy when you're on a bumpy sidewalk. And then just like narrow sidewalks, or there's like encroaching plant life. So that kind of stuff, which we see all over the city, but which definitely affects pedestrian, safety and comfort as you're walking around. So just to fill in some details. I'm sure residents would have more to say too, but that's just what I noticed as a recent guest. And then I wanted to say I am fully in favor of the parking reduction, especially since I believe you said, Dave, that your planning calculator showed even less parking would be needed for some of these uses. So, the less parking they have to put in, the more units they can put in, the more affordable they can be, to make it very simple to say. So I'm definitely for it. So thanks.
Commissioner Westerbeck.
Thank you. I concur with Commissioner Dodd. I'm completely behind the idea of a blanket reduction in parking requirements for micro housing, and as in the next steps in the packet wrote, and for the same reasons Commissioner Dodd outlined. And most micro housing that I've looked at being built in places even where parking was required, as they found with the right sizing, even in Bothell, which usually has a little higher number, they're often met 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. I think the last packet even indicated some of that research that the developers did. So they're way above. 0.75 is pretty safe, really. In fact, I bet, based on some studies that King County did a few years ago of middle of the night parking tallies, that there's still going to be open spots each night in that building. So I think it's ample, and that would be a good benchmark to begin with for future microhousing in the code as well. And I will, as part of that, as Commissioner Robeson was indicating, given the community concerns, I think we already have some parking pass programs up around the school. And, I would see that it seems like it would be a good idea to expand those or to apply them to areas that they're not applied yet, to allay those concerns in the community if necessary. I know in my part of downtown, I've proposed that other times that people get concerned about all the apartment dwellers parking on the streets. And if we had a permit system, then people who live in town, you get a pass somehow, and maybe you do live in an apartment, you've got a pass, but at least you're paying for it, you're registered for it, so that they're for people who live there and not just visitors or students or whatever. So, just ways to manage the parking. So I think that would go a long way to help with some of the community concerns too. Thanks.
Commissioner Curd.
Thanks. This is Karsten. I agree with Commissioner Westerbeck about parking management. When I was on that extended walk with Commissioner Dodd that Saturday, I spoke with some residents who were really happy with the parking management that had been implemented, and they said that it was really successful in keeping cul-de-sacs kind of free of long-term parking. That said, street space, every square inch of asphalt in the city that's owned in the public area in right-of-way belongs to everybody. And so I do have some concerns with strictly regulating parking management, but I think it would be good to delve into that deeper. I know that there's hunger on council probably to investigate this a little bit more too. Seems like everybody in the city has an opinion on parking, and so it warrants more consideration and kind of careful investigation into parking management and what works and what doesn't, so that we get it right. The other thing I wanted to mention is about the reduction to 0.75. I'm wholeheartedly in favor. In fact, I think 0.75 is too conservative. The right size parking calculator from King County, I wish there was one in Snohomish County too, but in King County, it doesn't take into consideration the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to be implemented with Stride, ST3. That's on this street. There's an investment of hundreds of millions of dollars in transit on this street, on Beardsley and 185th. And so immediately 0.75 is already kind of, it should be retroactively implemented because we already have funding, design is underway, construction isn't that far out. And so 0.75 might not be future-proofing, but it's a start, and I'm wholeheartedly in support of that, especially because of the infrastructure that's here already, which is pretty significant. Thank you.
Commissioner Alders.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Alders here. I echo my fellow commissioners around the need for reducing parking requirements, that it makes sense that it's going to be a transit center. There's going to be options, and I'm persuaded by the data that a micro apartment would have the would be less likely to have a higher number of cars that were being parking there. But I also support the exploring what permitting would look like so that street parking can be protected for people in the neighborhood. So I really appreciate all of our commissioners here and their thoughts and contributions tonight.
Thank you. So Dave, I do believe there is resident parking only in that area. Is that correct? Not on Beardsley, but in the streets behind. You're muted. You're muted, Dave.
Sorry, barking dog. Yes, the Sunrise Valley View has residential permit parking. I don't know if it extends all the way up Circle Drive, but I know it does apply to 108th and Sunset Drive and the cul-de-sacs off of 108th.
Thanks. So I heard a pretty strong consensus in favor of the 0.75 number. I do think more generally parking management is an issue within Bothell, and I've heard others. It's not particularly within our purview, but I don't know that the 2-hour parking is enforced in very many places. And there are issues, but again, that's outside the Planning Commission, and I think there's a general awareness of that as well. So the final item that I had that you asked us for feedback on, Dave, was the issue of the variable setbacks. My words, allowing them to move the building closer to the street, away from the residential area, and then getting a benefit for that. Is that correct?
Yes, they don't get any additional building area, I guess, unless they have
the footprint isn't larger, but
yeah.
So Commissioner comments on the variable setback recommendation, Commissioner Westerbeck.
As I mentioned earlier, my first comment, I'm wholeheartedly behind this. I think it's a great idea because the places where we are allowing or we're recommending the 4th floor overlay, they are going to be more urban. We want them to be closer, and it's actually feels good as you walk down a sidewalk to have buildings on the edges of the streets. Those are the streets most humans love the most, not when the building's way far back. So that might be fine for a single family home, but here it's really appropriate. So to me, this hopefully they would take that option as the builder, or it sounds like they have to, and pull it away. And the community also gets what they want, which is that buffer, that larger distance, that green space, and we get a better urban environment. So to me, it's a win-win. This is a no-brainer that we really should implement that, pulling those buildings 5 feet from the front setback and adding it to the back.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Dodd?
Thanks. Just wanted to add that I also think it's a great idea. Common sense kind of is what it sounded like to me. So I like it. Thanks.
Okay. Other commissioners? So Dave, I think you got a consensus on that one.
Yes, I think I have my marching orders for writing up proposed code amendments and Planning Commission findings. I think there's plenty of good material in the discussion that we've had to date, and bringing those back to you on June 2nd in a public hearing. I think we're ready for that. We were holding out the possibility that if we had some sticky issues that we wanted more study session, informal discussion on, we could bring this back in 2 weeks. But I think we got very clear direction, and I appreciate that.
Okay, any other commissioner comments on this agenda item? Recognizing that we will get specific code amendments addressing this and a public hearing with more public comment at the first meeting in June on it.
And additional analysis to base your recommendation on.
Okay. Seeing none, I think we'll close this agenda item. We'll close the study session and look forward to the next item here. Director Cotterman, the next item is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before the commission?
There is no unfinished business, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Excuse me. Next item, reports from staff. Staff, anything for us?
Just a couple of items, Mr. Chair. So I sent an email earlier today to commissioners regarding a couple of upcoming events. Affordable Housing Week is next week, I believe. Trying to find my calendar here. Yes, is next week. So there's an event on Monday around noon, and then also one coming up in June. I believe it's June 11th. So if you are interested in attending either or both of those, if you would please let me know, just in case we would have a quorum, we'll need to do some notification as we've talked about many times before. I know you're all familiar with that. Commissioner Westerbeck has already indicated he will be attending both of those. So thank you for that. I'm glad that you're able to attend. Generally, there's good information at these. I'm familiar with most of the organizations that are listed with these, but there's a couple of new ones I think that could be interesting there as well. I also want to talk a little bit about schedule. Dave alluded to this earlier. So this item that you had this evening will be for a public hearing on your June 2nd agenda. And we'll be doing the public notification on that and conducting the public hearing on that evening and looking for a recommendation from the commission so that we can take that then on to the city council and wrap up this item. We had originally planned on coming back to the commission with additional discussion around the bonus incentive program for Canyon Park. We had also hoped to get started on the transfer development rights program in Canyon Park. And both of those are delayed for different reasons. The bonus incentive program, Senior Planner Lamb is still working diligently on that and doing quite a bit of research. And what we're learning is there's a lot more that we need to delve into on that before we can really come back to the commission with additional information. We don't want to just bring you something for informational purposes only unless we feel it's providing a little bit more background and leading to more of a specific proposal. So there's more work to do on that. And I don't have a specific date for you, but we hope to bring something back to you in June or July on that one. And on the transfer development rights, just to give a quick update on where we are on that, we have not yet been able to start that program because we're working with Sound Transit on a funding agreement. They have agreed to provide the funding necessary to hire a consultant to do the analysis, the feasibility work, and then draft the code. So this will be on their dime, not the city's dime, which is very good. We're very happy about that and being able to move forward. However, when you're dealing with two bureaucracies, the city and a regional transit agency, things take a little bit longer to get all of the details worked out. So we are intending to go to the council at their May 18th meeting to get the city's agreement on the funding agreement, and then the Sound Transit Board would sign off at their meeting later this month, and then we would do the contracting with a consultant to get the work started. So at this point, I would hope we'd have something, at least an introduction to that, to the commission in July. All of that to say, I don't think we have anything for you for the meeting on the 19th of this month. So I would suggest that we cancel that meeting, and we will then work toward the June 2nd public hearing and hopefully be able to bring something back to you at the June 16th meeting on the countywide center designation for the downtown that we've talked about. The commission does not have an official role in that, but there's some information that we would like to bring you and get some feedback from you about as far as some different boundary ideas that we're kicking around among staff. So at the very least, we would have that to bring back to you at the June 16th meeting. So having said all of that, is that satisfactory to the commission if we cancel the May 19th meeting?
So any objections to canceling a meeting? I don't see any.
Rarely do we get an objection to that, but I always like to ask. So.
Okay. Well, great. And Commissioner Curd.
This is not an objection. Director Cotterman, I'm wondering if you have an update about the buildable lands analysis. Has Snohomish County finalized their process?
Thank you. Yes, we have received the the information about the residential capacity as well as the commercial capacity for the future growth. We're in good shape on both. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers for you off the top of my head, but we're actually in good shape on both of those. And that's something we can bring back to you on the June 16th date as well. We can give you an update on where we are in both King and Snohomish counties. And there in Snohomish County is going to be starting their target discussion. So that would be the jobs and housing targets that we would have to plan for in our 2024 comp plan update. We already have some numbers from King County on that. So we can put that as another item for the 16th. I think that would probably fill up that meeting pretty well.
Sounds good.
Thanks for asking.
I have one addition to the staff report. I just wanted to report back at the April 7th meeting. I mentioned that staff were working on a grant application, the AARP Community Challenge Grant. That did go in on April 14th. They are going to be notifying about awards in June. And if we do get it, one of the things we said we would do would be more public outreach around that. So we'll be doing that through Planning Commission and other boards, Landmark Board. The application was centered around wayfinding, history, and art in the downtown sub area, pedestrian wayfinding particularly. So keeping our fingers crossed. And I want to acknowledge that Danae McGee, who's our tourism coordinator, did the lion's share of the work on that.
Great.
And I just want to thank the commission again for all of your good feedback and discussion tonight. Thank you. Very helpful as always. And also thanks to Mike Stanger, Dave's silent partner on this project. So appreciate him being here this evening as well.
All right. Concluding reports from staff. Any reports from members for the group? Not seeing any. There being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Dodd.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
And second?
Second. Oh, there we go.
Oh, Commissioner Aldrich, I saw your hand.
You got it first, Carrie. You were talking.
Commissioner Aldrich, he's waiting for you.
I'm muted. All right. I second the motion. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Hearing no objections, we will adjourn the meeting tonight, the May 5th meeting at 7:45. A brief and productive meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.